30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small, host and producer of All About You. And All About You is one of two different programs that I broadcast live every single week at AccessTV.org studios in downtown Hartford. All About You is a show that's designed to, give you, the viewers, information and backgrounds and a life story on his or her guests. And this morning, we have a returning guest to the AccessTV.org network who were on Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley Talk Show back in September 2022, and have the pleasure of having him back this time on All About You. The guest has a tremendous background in the international world of reggae music and a great, phenomenal DJ to go along with that. No other than the director of catalog development for VP Records based out of Jamaica, New York, Carter Van Pelt. Good morning, Carter. How are you doing?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fine, and you, Carter? Looks like you have a nice sunny background.
Yeah, it hasn't been that way every day here, but today we got a blue sky.
Okay. Well, Carter, this is a biographical talk show, so I can kind of just start off. I believe you were born in the state of Nebraska.
That's right. I was Lincoln. I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska. Yeah.
What was it like growing up in Lincoln, Nebraska as a child?
Well, I grew up outside of Lincoln, Nebraska, and it was, I guess, in a way, when you don't have any other context and you grow up in kind of the country, you learn to. I had a half brother and a half sister, so they were a lot older. So I was effectively like an only child from a certain age. So I had a lot of time to myself, and it was, kind of beautiful, actually.
Is it really cold and open territory when you live in Nebraska?
In the winter, yeah. Like this time of year is not the time of year that you want to be there. Just January, February. It's March now. It's March now, obviously, but yeah, it's in the plains like that. The wind can really knock you down.
Just curious. What kind of professional sports teams can you pick up in Nebraska? I mean, what's the closest?
There's not like the closest professional teams are in Kansas City, so that's like 3 hours from Lincoln or Omaha. Okay. So that's why the college football has thrived so much there, is the lack of professional, Major League Baseball or pro football or basketball.
Carter, was that the type of sport that you liked, college football?
I loved it. Yeah, I was immersed in it because I grew up in really the heyday of the Tom Osborne college football era. So yeah, for me that was everything growing up. Loved it. And I still like it to this day, even though they're not what they once were, but it's still something I enjoy. And my family had season tickets, so I grew up really immersed in that for sure.
Now, basketball or baseball, I guess you say Kansas City is the closest market for football.
Yeah, the Royals. Yeah, the former Kings. The King. You know how changes take place, but
you mean the Kansas City Kings basketball?
The Kansas City Kings, once upon a time, exactly.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of things to do? I'm just trying to picture Lincoln or the greater Lincoln, Nebraska area. Is it like a nice downtown, nice food places? What's the vibe like?
Yeah. I mean, it's a college town. It's not diverse. It's not culturally diverse, but I think if you know what your passion is, you can find like-minded people who are into those same types of things. And yeah, most college towns have some decent restaurants and cultural activities.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was a nice place to grow up. Probably you would say a safe place to grow up, but maybe overly sheltered in some respects. So at some point in time, when I became really interested in Jamaican music, that's when I looked at the possibility of moving elsewhere, which ultimately led me to go to graduate school in New York City.
Hmm. But again, in Nebraska, what was the music scene like? I mean, did you hear
Okay.
any internationally reggae music? Was it hip hop? Was it
Yeah.
R&B? Was it pop? What was the whole music scene like in that area of the country?
So I would say back in the 80s, when I was coming up, the music scene was a lot of kind of left of center underground rock or post punk music. That was kind of the college music scene. And because Nebraska was on the interstate, taking you from, if you were going from Minneapolis or Chicago coming to Denver, Colorado, for example, as a touring artist, you could stop and do a show in Lincoln or Omaha. So that's where a lot of the music scene involved, those kind of middle of the week tour stops. So yeah, there's it seems like it's out of the way or off the beaten path, but it's on a major thoroughfare across the country. So that definitely helped the music scene. As far as reggae goes, Peter Tosh did play there in
Mm-hmm.
1981.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Bob Marley never played there, nor Bunny Wailer. But yeah, Steel Pulse. Some of the early groups to tour reggae made it through, although not all of them. And eventually, like artists like Burning Spear as well.
Well, did you kind of get some form of introduction into reggae international music in Nebraska? Or did you have to?
Yeah,
Oh, you did?
no, in Nebraska, and it happened because of the community radio station. And if you're familiar with like kind of non-commercial broadcasting in the United States, there was a big movement of community radio station development in the probably from the early 70s. And my hometown got a community radio station, I would say, by the end of the 1970s. And so that's where your alternative type programming would take place, your specialty shows that would feature new musics or emerging musics or musics from global music. So you had hip hop programming and uh, reggae programming going back pretty far. And those things opened the doors to uh, reggae for me and a lot of people. And then also, you had college radio. The University of Nebraska had
Mm-hmm.
a radio station. And so, yeah, by the time I got to the University of Nebraska and I was studying broadcasting, I did a reggae specialty program. But yeah, so I was hearing it as a teenager, definitely.
Well,
Definitely. Not to jump ahead, but that's kind of, those were important things for me to get exposed to something that was, seemingly like way outside my firsthand experience
right.
culturally.
Well, Card, obviously, with your background in Jamaican reggae music or international reggae music, it's just hard for me to picture. Maybe you can clarify this. If you want a beef patty, can you find that in Nebraska, at least at that
That's a
time or now?
that's a great question. No, I mean no, you have to. No, there's not if there's a patty shop now, I'm not aware of it. There was definitely not anything quite like that then. Yeah, there have been some Caribbean restaurants,
Okay.
but it's not prevalent. It's not prevalent. So the Jamaicans or the Caribbean people who live there,
Hmm.
they had to go to, like a market that would carry their particular types of products. So Grace Foods in Jamaica and D&G and the big kind of food distributors, they distribute their this culturally specific products like Aki or Kalaloo or whatever.
Hmm.
You could get those all over the United States, but you'd have to go to a very particular type of market to get them. So if you're going to eat Aki and saltfish in Lincoln, Nebraska, you'd have to go to somebody's house to get it.
To get it, yeah.
like a Jamaican who lived there who made it. Yeah,
Right. Well, obviously, the Jamaican influence has really transformed throughout the world. You know, you'll be surprised, like you say,
everywhere.
not just in. We're going to get to Brooklyn or New York, where you would eventually move to, but it's not just in the center places, the center places that
Hmm.
most people would think of. But again, the type of reggae music when you came along, which artist did you kind of gravitate to listening to?
Sure. It was really so. The first introduction to reggae for me would have come via some of the rock groups that were taking a little piece of reggae and incorporating it into their sound. The best example of that was the Police,
Hmm.
right? So they had out of their catalog, the Police have a fraction, a decent fraction of songs that were heavily reggae influence,
Hmm.
right? So then from there, I remember I saw the drummer of that group. He was wearing a t-shirt that said Steel Pulse. So just being curious, I went ran down a Steel Pulse album, and yeah, it was called Earth Crisis, and that was the first reggae LP that I ever bought. And then actually from there, I pretty quickly moved on to Bob Marley and the Wailers. I had seen Bob Marley perform on television
Hmm.
in the early 80s, and I didn't know who he was, or at that point in time, maybe I was 10 years old. But yeah, he had gotten as far as to be on television in the Midwest at least one time, performing Get Up, Stand Up. I
Hmm.
remember the blue denim. You know how he used to wear all the whole denim.
Hmm.
I remember that. That was like the image in my mind is him wearing the denim and the dreadlocks and singing Stand Up for Your Rights" on TV. But it was a few years before I actually had his music at my disposal, in home, and could really study it.
Hmm.
That
Now,
makes sense. But Steel Pulse was the first.
still pulse, yes. Now, Carter, when you get into your decision to relocate to New York, Brooklyn, how did that all come about for you?
Yeah, so I was by that point in time, I was in my early 30s, and I had been involved. I got pretty involved in reggae from the college radio show, and then I used to write for some of the magazines that were dedicated to reggae music in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And just to put it in context, I'm 54 years old right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the 90s, when I'm in my 20s, and I have a journalism degree now, there are a handful of magazines that are uh, completely devoted to reggae or Caribbean culture. The Beat magazine in Los Angeles, and Reggae Report, and Dub Missive out of Florida. And so I used to write for those magazines, and I realized at some point that I had developed I learned to write better than I ever did in school. I learned by writing about these artists. I had access to them because of the touring routes that I was telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to sit down with like members of the group Black Uhuru, and then eventually Steel Pulse, and do these interviews. And I was passionate enough about their music that I was able to, ask meaningful questions and form a picture of them that maybe hadn't been fully explored. And so getting articles published, etc. I'm answering your question in a roundabout way because
Mm-hmm.
you asked me about moving to New York, but
Mm-hmm.
all of this was building the radio, the writing, the journalism, and I was working in community organizing, unrelated to music, but I would say progressive political organizing type stuff. And I just wanted to be closer to the culture,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe study journalism. So I was looking at graduate school in journalism, and I ended up applying for New York University's um, cultural reporting and criticism program. And then almost on a whim, I applied to the arts administration program at Columbia. This doesn't sound like I thought this through very well,
Mm-hmm.
because I maybe I did, but as a practical matter, I thought, okay, what's the future of journalism? Am I going to be able to make a living doing this? So I looked at arts administration as possibly more practical.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up getting into both of those programs, and I picked the arts administration one at Columbia. So that's when I moved to New York. That's what set that in motion. And honestly, out of that program, it was a good education, but access to WKCR at Columbia University was really as much of a key thing for me as the whole curriculum and everything that I studied. But yeah, that's the path to New York was to get an advanced degree.
Well, Carter, when you moved to New York, did you move currently where you're residing at now in Brooklyn? And I believe you live in
And
Flatbush section of Brooklyn, if I'm
yeah,
correct.
I do. I've lived in Flatbush for 18 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I lived the prior couple of years in Harlem, just up above Columbia. So most of my time in New York has been at in Flatbush, Brooklyn. But yeah, I did spend a little time in Manhattan during the graduate school days. Is the breeze that's now blowing past me causing any problems on the mic?
No, you're doing fine. No, we can hear you
Okay,
pretty good.
good.
So in total, how long have you been in New York when you add up
So yeah,
college?
we're 20, 20 23 years this year.
Okay, 23 years.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to make a choice, obviously, if you want to get exposed to reggae, the Jamaican culture, and you don't want to go to Jamaica, you can't really pick a better choice. I mean, maybe Miami, South Florida, but Brooklyn, New York has a tremendous Jamaican reggae
Yeah.
feel, culture. It's a high population base of
Right.
born Jamaicans, second, third generations. So,
Yes.
how was that feeling all about when you arrived in Brooklyn, Flatbush Avenue?
Yeah, it was great. It was present from, like, I remember when I first got to New York, just to be able to hear cars driving by blasting, like, at the time, I know I Wayne Can't Satisfy Her was a big track on the street.
Hmm.
And just to be able to hear that kind of consistently, and to know what the hit parade of music was based on what people were playing out loud out on the street.
Hmm.
I think that's one of the best examples of how, when you live in a community, you feel that pulse, right?
Hmm.
And Caribbean people, not just Jamaicans, but Caribbean people love sound system, and they love to play music up loud at volume. And so, yeah, you get to hear what people are into for sure.
Is this Flatbush Avenue in the same era where the late rapper Biggie Smalls was born and raised at?
Yeah, I got the impression Biggie was from maybe Crown Heights, but yeah, it's all within a couple mile area.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And the movie Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, was that filmed anywhere? And I know you might have not have been in Brooklyn at that
No, I
time.
wasn't there then, but yeah,
Oh,
it was filmed around maybe between Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights, and Ben. For some reason, I think it has unless I'm confusing it, I felt like it had a South Brooklyn aspect to it. I haven't watched it in a long time, but yeah,
mm,
it's all in that, it's all in that world
that
for
well,
sure.
right. But Carter, that has to feel like night and day. I mean, growing up in the greater Lincoln, Nebraska area, going
Yeah.
to Brooklyn, how was you able to adapt and make that type of transition?
Only because I had that specific cultural interest. I don't think I could have made that. I don't think I could have adapted if I didn't have, like, a kind of a want to, a
Hmm.
passion, something driving me to be there, like,
Hmm.
really, because there's a lot, when you have to deal with the intensity of living next to that many people, um, and all the inconveniences.
Hmm.
It's like you have to want to be there. So the interest in the culture, the passion for the culture that I developed, um, that was the key to it.
Now, how is it like when I don't know if you have ever participated in the Labor Day Caribbean Parade? I think it's the largest parade in the
Yeah.
country. What is that like? And did you actually participate in any capacity during that type of celebration?
I haven't participated other than just to be there on the street. when it's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of people. You have to really, there's another thing you have to really be in the mood for, to be around that many people. It's hard to get in there. It's hard to get close to it. And when it's over and you want to leave, you're tracking in and out with
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of thousands of people. A million people attend, I guess. Yeah.
Right. I think it's the largest parade in the country, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know what would be larger. Yeah, it's huge.
Right, right. Now, obviously, when did you take your first trip to Jamaica, and what was that experience like? And I know you traveled all over the world.
Yeah.
But let's start there first.
Yeah, I came here in 1996
Mm-hmm.
for about 3.5 weeks, first time, and it was kind of a working trip for me. I was retained as a consultant to do publicity for kind of an initiative that had to do with decriminalization of marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was here with some people, and I did I wrote their press releases and helped them like work out their talking points to go make media appearances and whatnot. But yeah, we were here for 3.5 weeks. What was that like? That was intense. It was incredible. Now, the biggest difference between then and now in Jamaica is smartphone, cellular communications, having access, like the idea that we're doing this right now.
Mm-hmm.
We would have had to be I would have had to have been at a TV station in Kingston, with a satellite link up back then in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're just really not disconnected anywhere, and you can access, for better or worse, you can access everything that you would have in the States. You can access all that information, including the people that you're used to talking to on a daily basis. Back then, it was total immersion in Jamaican culture, total separation from back there. So that was challenging. That was challenging, but I just went with it. Didn't have any choice.
Right. And currently, which part of Jamaica are you filming this broadcast from now?
I'm in the parish of St. Anne,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm near a community on the coast called Runaway Bay, which is, interestingly, the first place I ever stayed in Jamaica was very near here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's full circle moment for me.
Now, you travel other places throughout the world as well, involved with your
somewhat.
music?
Yeah, I've been to Asia. I've been to Vietnam and China.
Uh-huh.
And only to London, in Europe, which I think most people have been to Europe by my age, and I have not been to continental Europe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a little bit. I'm not the most why I'm not the most well-traveled person is because every time I have the time or the freedom to travel, I come here. So many trips I've taken here. I kind of tend to focus on it.
I was just going to ask you which, and I knew the answer. I would assume you prefer Jamaica more than London and England, but I was going to ask you that question, but you kind of beat me to it with your response. So I guess I had the feeling, obviously, you love Jamaica more than you love England. It's just about the amount of time that you've been down there.
I can't even compare them. Right. There's London's a cool place, but I haven't even been outside of London. So I mean, there's a lot for me to explore. I need to break my cycle a little bit and get to some different places.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Carter, the last time we had you on, obviously, if people don't know, you have a key position at VP Records as the Director of Catalog Development. How did that opportunity come along for yourself?
Sure. So that came along about 6 years ago. I told you I came to New York in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
I went back to Nebraska for a couple years from 2014 to 2018
mm-hmm.
to look after my father, who's since passed away. But I went back there. I kept my apartment in Brooklyn on a sublease.
Mm-hmm.
I was in I was in Nebraska, but I was also, at the time, I was able to come to Jamaica more often.
Mm-hmm.
And VP Records had given me, I had some indication that they were interested in hiring me, but we never really settled on what that would look like. In 2018, after I had been in Jamaica for, several months, this time of the year, winter. Um, and I reached out to them. This is after my father passed away, and I said, if you still have a job, I'd be interested in talking about it. And so they basically, because of the advent of streaming, I'm talking about Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, Amazon, all those streaming platforms created a new revenue source in catalog for them. So then they created a position around catalog promotion and marketing and catalog curation. And so I've been their first director of catalog development starting from 2018 until now. So, yeah.
And
there's somebody hollering out for. Sorry, it's real Jamaica.
Right. Yeah. Well, obviously, you have a key position at VP Records, and it sounds like from the last time you enjoy your career and your occupation there at VP Records, but that's located in Jamaica, New York. So you have to commute if you're living in Brooklyn to Jamaica, New York on a daily basis, or do you do it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. With the exception of I do some remote work from here, and then I'm able to go work remotely from back in Nebraska, usually once a year as well.
Now, I believe you had attended the movie of the Bob Marley film in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Okay, what was your take on that film, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, sure. So my take on it was that it was highly entertaining, but not necessarily accurate all the way through. I mean, it kind of goes close to the what I understand the true story to be, and then it veers off and splits off and comes back. And some people would say that gap from reality is wider, and but I think it's entertainment. It's a movie. It's not a documentary. So the people who produced it, the Marley family, that they had an interest in focusing on certain aspects of the story. So there are things that were left out that were important. You notice Peter Tosh isn't in the movie, other than just like kind of a background character. Things like that. And there are other things that people focused on that were very upsetting to some people, that were perceived to be inaccurate or wholly made up. But that's my qualification. But I would say overall it's very entertaining, and it gave you a sense of his commitment to what he was doing. And I think that's a truth at the center of who he was, is that he was incredibly singularly connected to his life's mission. Carter, that comes through.
Yeah, Carter, have you ever been able to meet any of the Marley family, his children, Rita Marley, just out of curiosity?
Oh, in a very superficial way, like in passing. I did get to know. I've met his musicians and spent some time around some of his musicians. The guitarist, Junior Marvin, who is he has a notable role in the movie, and the bassist, the late Aston family man Barrett, who just passed away within the last month, I would say 2 months. I met both of them and interviewed both of them, because they toured as the Wailers after Bob Marley passed. They toured for years and decades and just carried on that legacy. So I did meet them.
Carter, why do you think Bob Marley is such a legend, revolutionist throughout the world? I mean, is it just beyond his music alone, or just what he stood for? It's sort of like a Muhammad Ali. People know Muhammad Ali as a great boxer, but it was so much more. Yeah, icon, exactly. But it was so much more to his life beyond just a boxer. Do you think Bob Marley kind of falls into that same category?
100%, and you can attribute that to charisma and that self-confidence, certainty, and the ability to communicate what you're about to people across cultures. You know how rare that is? I mean, there's a ton of talented people in Jamaica, but the biggest barrier here is for people to understand themselves, how they come across outside of this culture. I think it's so distinct in the way things are done here that a lot of times people don't understand that difference, and that they've got to think kind of like they have to think in global concepts to relate to, humanity as a whole. Bob Marley just somehow he figured that out, or intuitively he knew it, which is what you can call it genius.
Yeah, yeah, and kind of separates him from maybe the other reggae singers like Jimmy Cliff, who was kind of coming along at that same time. I think Peter Tosh had like a strong Rastafarian movement. I think he kind of believed in legalizing marijuana. He kind of made a couple songs. I don't know if it was him or one other artist about legalizing marijuana.
It's Peter Tosh for sure. I mean, Peter Tosh was, in a way, he was about that almost. He thought that was the way through to get, to a larger truth and reality, was that herb, they called it herb, is the healing of the nations. Like that was the key. Just get everyone herbed up.
Right.
That was his vision, and I don't think Bob Marley disagreed with that, but he kind of put it in a different way. But the message of Rastafari was definitely center lane for both of them.
Exactly. And then when you get into Peter Tosh, he has a little different style of his reggae music. It sounds like he comes across more of a stronger, dominating style of his vocal tones comparable to Bob Marley. And I think sometimes people throughout the world don't really recognize even Peter Tosh enough to realize the talent base that he had. And then also go along with Rita Marley. She had a very good sound. She played a critical role in the Wailers band as well. So there's a lot that goes into reggae. Obviously, way more into the dance hall style. When you came to New York in the 90s, dance hall was very, very big and very, very popular. Do you kind of like all forms of international reggae music? I mean, beyond just the traditional reggae?
I mean, I listen to dance hall and I like dance hall. As a DJ, I've never been like that. Hasn't been my identity, but I do keep track of what's coming along in dance hall. I think the thing that kind of keeps reggae at the forefront for me is that reggae was originally made with live instruments. So I learned to play an instrument in the band when I was in junior high. So I have an affinity for live instruments, and reggae is a live instrument music. You can program it and you can make it with computers and whatnot. But dance hall really came into its own as we know it in the digital era. So most of the drum patterns, the bass lines are played on a keyboard. They're digital. They're not as seemingly organic or live. They don't have the live human element to them that reggae does. So yes, I definitely check for dancehall, but I prefer reggae, and I think I like the global, the universal messages that we were talking about before with Bob Marley and that generation. I think they really had something right.
Exactly. So obviously, when you come back to Brooklyn, although you're in the United States, you find yourself in a heavy Jamaican, Caribbean population base. Is it kind of almost the same thing to some degree? I mean, you're going to hear the dialect, you're going to get the food, the drinks heavily there. You're just in a different country. I mean, but there's a lot of good similarities that you can pick up on being in Brooklyn. Exactly.
Yeah, some people call it like Kingston 14 or whatever they call it.
Exactly.
Or 13, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. It's or the 14th parish. Is that what they call it? I can't remember what they call it. There's some joke about Brooklyn being the next. It's like there's so many Jamaicans there that it's like almost like a next Jamaica. But I mean, even my neighborhood I think there are more Haitians in my immediate neighborhood than there are Jamaicans.
Exactly.
But these things always change, and they never stay the same for more than
And then
a while.
and then plus when you go to work at Jamaica, New York, you have a heavy Caribbean population base there too as
Yeah,
well. So you definitely
yeah.
stay abreast.
It's
Um,
just an incredibly diverse city, no matter where you go. You know.
exactly, exactly. What are some of the things you're involved with or that you've been involved with since you've been in Jamaica over the past couple of weeks you've been over there,
Hmm.
if you don't mind me
Yeah,
asking?
yeah. I've been here 4 weeks as of tomorrow. I go back to New York tomorrow.
Hmm.
Um, so it's been like a week of vacation, rest and relaxation, and a couple weeks of work.
Hmm.
And I'm just here to catch up with some of the artists and producers that we have projects either out or coming up, like the catalog of King Jammy, the producer King Jammy. He was he was an instrumental producer in the emergence of dancehall music in the 80s, you know, like Under Miss Sling Ting
Hmm.
was his production. And um, so we're always working on catalog projects with him. I got a couple dogs barking, please. Sorry
Yeah,
about
okay.
that.
We here.
Just authentic sound effects.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
But yeah, yeah. So, and also like the reissue of an album by Fred Locks called Black Star Liner. Did some social media content gathering with him, and then I went to a number of shows. Um, Protege's Lost in Time festival I attended, and I also attended the Island Music Conference, which is organized by Shaggy and a team of music professionals, and that was a 5 day music conference, industry conference. And then me and a couple of my colleagues presented a panel at the Global Reggae Conference at the University of the West Indies a few weeks ago.
Hmm.
So yeah, that kind of touches on it. But just being here and kind of catching the vibe of the island is important to me to be like really tapped in. Yeah, I can tap in New York, but there's nothing like being here.
Exactly, exactly. You're getting the real thing, obviously. So when you come back to New York, you're gonna continue to be part of VP Records. I mean, is that something that you look forward to? You know, obviously as a key figure in that
Hey,
record operation.
well, I mean, there's always interesting projects to work on,
Hmm.
but a job is a job and
That's
work is work, and it's not all every day, all day, every day is not like a reggae party. But
exactly.
you know what I mean.
Uh,
But it's there are some really meaningful things that I've been able to put together in the years I've been there, like the Down in Jamaica box set was one of the first things I worked on here.
hmm.
I worked on at VP, which is a an elaborate like collector anniversary box set that traces the history of the company. And anyone who streams music, you can find it online. Just search for Down in Jamaica 40 Years of VP Records.
Hmm.
And that was me. That was my creating the history of that label through a selection of over 80 songs that were, key songs in the development of the company.
Hmm.
And that's a big project. And I haven't really worked on anything with that scope since then. But just to answer your question, yeah, there are some very enjoyable projects that I get to work on. And most recently, I was really happy with one called Prince Fatty Meets the Gorgon in Dub. I know that's a mouthful, but it was an instrumental, dub album, mixes of a classic producer catalog, the catalog of Bunny Striker Lee. And that release was really well received. And then we've got other things coming, and there's some projects coming up, releases coming up for Record Store Day in April, and other stuff scheduled down the road. And yeah, I'm always putting stuff together behind the scenes or helping promote. I don't do anything alone, but
Hmm.
helping promote the catalog projects.
Now, you mentioned that you went back to Nebraska when your father was ill. Do
Yeah,
you still go back to
yeah,
Nebraska quite often, or every now and then? I mean, what's
I,
your?
d- I do. I do. I go every year.
Mhm.
I go every year, usually in the fall. I try and hit it when the weather is optimal for my
Right.
tastes.
Okay. Well, you probably don't miss the cold winters. I mean, if Nebraska is cold and snowy, is what the perception, or is it really that bad growing in the wintertime in Nebraska?
It's not even as much about the cold as it is about the dark, the long nights and the darkness and
Mm-hmm.
the like in the middle of the winter there, it seems like the sun is just not pulling it's not pushing through. It's not pushing or pulling or whatever the sun does.
Mm-hmm.
Just not giving you all it has to offer. So that can be very kind of bleak and depressing.
Right.
So I don't want to dwell on that. So that the reason I go to Nebraska in September, October is because it's quite beautiful then.
Okay, beautiful.
As it is, from end of March on in through May, it's beautiful.
Well, that's
So,
nice though
yeah.
that you still go back to your home state or your hometown, and you still stay abreast. And once a year, and you go to Jamaica. It sounds like you go quite often as well there. So I
Yeah.
mean, as we're kind of running out of time, or we're running down on time. I mean, it's a real interesting, informative show. Talking to you again. As I try to ask my guests every single week, if there's anything else about your life or what you're currently working on that you would like for people to know about,
Yes.
feel free to do so.
Yeah. No, I mean, we skipped over a major thing. All
Mm-hmm.
right. And that major thing is something that kind of fell into place about 14 years ago, and it's been like a real center of my life. And it probably helped contribute to why VP was interested in hiring me.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the radio show that I was involved with at Columbia University, the Saturday morning reggae show. You can
Mm-hmm.
tune in on WKCR every Saturday morning from 8 to noon, and it's me and Vaughn Allstar. Um, that radio show has been very important to me, given me a great platform. But I started an event in 2010 called Coney Island Reggae on the Boardwalk.
Mm-hmm.
And Reggae on the Boardwalk has been going strong at least 4 times per year since then. And what it is, it's a sound system, DJ, free outdoor party, I guess, if you will, or in the terms of Jamaican Jamaican culture, you call it a session.
Mm-hmm.
And these sessions are about 4 hours long, and they're vinyl only. And I get DJs from not only all over the Brooklyn and New York City area, but sometimes people come in from Jamaica or internationally, and we play classic reggae. Really not much in the vein of dance hall, but it's sound system style. So this is something that I feel very proud of. And if you're interested in more info about it, you can look at the Instagram account, which is at Coney Island Reggae.
Mm-hmm.
I expanded it to Reggae Under the Bridge in 2021. And I've also been under the sponsorship of the Queensboro president Donovan Richards, brought it to the boardwalk in the Rockaways 2 years ago. So it's been a really beautiful event, and it brings the reggae community and the Jamaican community together in New York for something that doesn't otherwise exist there. There are sound system events, and there are these kinds of things that may kind of be similar, but there's nothing that's free, and there's nothing that has as much vintage music, like real old school reggae,
Mm-hmm.
as my event. And it's been crucial. I mean, I think I've gotten a lot of love from the community because of doing that. I'm very proud of it.
Well, Card, I would definitely say beyond just your versatility, for someone to grow up and raised in Nebraska, which is totally, different than a Jamaican, New York type of atmosphere, how you've been able to really adapt and play a critical role in the international reggae music scene as a DJ. You bring a lot of creativity to the table, and you develop yourself along the way. People have this perception of most people that's involved in certain types of music. They have to be from a particular area where the music is always constantly being played and get that type of exposure. But you've obviously been able to learn and develop through just looking into it, bringing what you had learned in Nebraska. And I think that creativity side and that adoption side is definitely instrumental and plays a, I guess, important role in how you've been able to be a part, not just of VP Records, but now other factors that you just mentioned. And I think that sounds very impressive to me. And I definitely appreciate you being, again, a returning guest on the accesstv.org network. So again,
thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate that, and I don't take any of this for granted. I know it's been like I've been embraced by the community, and that's not a given. That's not automatic. But I just try to, iron sharpeth iron, and you give respect, and people will give you back respect if it's all sincere. And I think that's where it's hopefully where it comes from. So thank you for the comment.
No problem. It was our pleasure. Carter, enjoy your last day in Jamaica. Look forward to having you back in the United States very soon. And definitely we have to talk again sometime in the near future.
Thank you for the opportunity and the platform and the time to reflect. I appreciate having this chance.
Okay.
Keep doing the good work. All right.
All right. You're welcome, Carter. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Have a blessed day.
You too. Okay, this is Jonathan Small. I just enjoyed hosting this edition of All About You with the guest, the Director of Catalog Development for VP Records in Jamaica, New York, no other than Carter Van Pelt. And I definitely thought it was a real interesting, informative side of Carter Van Pelt that I hope you, the viewers, was able to learn and enjoy. As I say every single week, I always try to rotate the formats of the different type of shows that I host and produce. Next week, I do have a very instrumental entertainment person in the entertainment industry as well. And this will be a face-to-face edition. And I'm looking forward to this particular guest interviewing this person for the first time. But until I see you again, for people out there, have a very blessed day and keep the faith. Thank you.